desert, for I walk in this world. Good morning. Here we are on Tuesday morning, and we are continuing with our walk with Jesus through the book of Mark. I want to start today by reading a passage. I want to read to you Mark chapter 3, verses 7 through 12. And then we'll talk about what this interesting passage means for us. Jesus withdrew to the sea with his disciples, and a great multitude from Galilee followed, and also from Judea, and from Jerusalem, and from Idumea, and from beyond the Jordan, and the vicinity of Tyre and Sidon. A great number of people heard of all that he was doing and came to him. And he told his disciples that a boat should stand ready for him because of the crowd, so that they would not crowd him. For he had healed many, with the result that all of those who had afflictions pressed around him in order to touch him. Whenever the unclean spirits saw him, they would fall down before him and shout, "You are the Son of God." And he earnestly warned them not to tell who he was. So today we talk about Jesus and the crowds. Let's just put this in its proper setting. Jesus had just left the confrontations with the Pharisees over those two questions concerning the Sabbath and how they were to be observed, how that was to be observed, and what were the true priorities there. And he had fled from them, if you will. He had departed from them, and yet many had been following him. They knew that he had healed many people, so more and more people came to him for his personal attention to their needs. We can understand that. Our need, especially in the case of a critical illness for us or a family member, we would see that as the highest priority, and we would do everything we could to come in contact with the possibility of healing. So here were these crowds pressing in on him, wanting to be in contact with them. All of them came seeking his own personal attention to their needs. Anyone who has been in a helping profession knows how tiring people can be when they continually come asking for help, when people come making demands, when they're always there and there is no let up from that. We actually grow tired of that. There's a term for it. It's called compassion fatigue. And we grow tired because people wear us out sometimes, even when we want to be helping them. Well, here's Jesus. And he is accepting the reality that there are all these people. Now, we don't know exactly how many people there were in this crowd. We know on other occasions there were 4,000 people one time that he fed. On another occasion, 5,000. And it sounds like this crowd could easily be at least that big because they were coming from all of these different areas, and they were all wanting their own personal time with Jesus. So it was a stressful situation, really, because how was Jesus going to give personal attention, and yet how was he going to carry out the higher priority of giving significant teaching? The truth is, he healed many, many people, but he had a priority that demanded that he give some of his time to things that are bigger than the ailments of people. He came for the purpose of bringing us the good news. And the good news is not just physical healing. And so he was trying to do what was best on all fronts. So, as he saw the crowds, he gave his disciples instructions to have a boat ready for him so that he could launch out a short distance from the shore so that he could teach the crowds. In that way, everybody was getting the attention of hearing Jesus' highest priority. And yet he was not turning his back on the people. He was not pushing them away or running away from them. So Here are all these people making all these demands. And Jesus wanted to care for them. And he wanted to teach them. And then there was this other element in the crowd, an element that, quite honestly, we don't really understand. There were the unclean spirits. Okay, questions. Were these spirits separate from the people? Or were these spirits in some of the people? We don't really understand. Whatever the case was, these unclean spirits, when they came to Jesus, they would fall down before him because they knew who he was. And that's when they would shout, "You are the Son of God." And here again, Jesus surprises us. He could have, we would have taken this opportunity so to say to everybody that was there, watch this, because these unclean spirits know who I am and they bow down before me. Wasn't that the natural thing to do? But that's not what Jesus did. He didn't do that at all. Down in verse 12, and he earnestly warned them not to tell who he was. Why did Jesus do that? Was it because there were enough people already hearing about him and he didn't need them making the crowds even bigger? Was it because Jesus himself was being humble? Or maybe he just didn't want the unclean spirits being the ones who were proclaiming who he was. Honestly, we don't know. Anything that we might guess here is just that. It is just a guess. So let's not run down that path of assuming something that may or may not be true. So we look at this whole passage. There were the crowds, there were the unclean spirits, there was Jesus' command to the unclean spirits. So what do we draw from this passage? As Christians today, as disciples of Jesus, what do we learn from this event? Well, first of all, Jesus indeed had power over all infirmities. He had the power to heal. He had the power to teach with authority and not as their scribes. He was indeed a unique individual. He had power even over the unclean, or if we might say, over the evil spirits. We know that he attracted huge numbers of people because they came and they wanted to be a part of what he was doing. They wanted to be a part of the healing process, or they wanted to hear him as he was teaching, because evidently they saw in him the hope of Israel, the promise of the Messiah. And so they came to him. What we do know is simply this. Over all this situation, Jesus is Lord. His is the power. His is the glory. Jesus is Lord. In the Old Testament, we have a word for Lord that is the word Adonai. And when that phrase is used in addressing God, and in the case of the New Testament, addressing Jesus, the one who calls Jesus Lord is not just saying something about who Jesus is, it's saying something about who we are in relation to him. Because if I say Jesus is Lord, then I'm saying he is the Lord of my life. So, here is Jesus demonstrating his lordship. And all of these people were coming to him. I don't think it should be any great surprise to us that on the day of Pentecost, 3,000 people, perhaps many of these people, were baptized into Christ on that day, because that was the fulfillment of God's plan for salvation. Because he's not only just the Lord of creation, he is my Lord. And I hope he's your Lord. He is indeed Adonai to us. He is the Lord. He is the master of life. And therefore the crowds and even the unclean spirits were drawn to him because of his lordship. Consider his lordship in your life today and what that means. We'll talk tomorrow. Bye.
They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart words of life, words of hope.